Imagine waking up tomorrow and every law on Earth has vanished. No police, no courts, no fines, no arrests. What do you do first? Most people picture chaos, looting, violence, a world ruled by whoever is strongest. That is the story we have been told since childhood. But that story might be wrong. For decades, the economist Elinor Ostrom studied communities that had no formal law at all governing shared resources like fisheries, forests, and irrigation systems. She expected to find collapse. Instead, she found something else. Villages built their own rules, enforced by reputation and social pressure, that outlasted many government-imposed systems. She would later win a Nobel Prize for showing that people do not need a state to avoid destroying what they share. They need trust and a way to punish those who break it. So maybe the question is not whether law disappears. Maybe the question is what quietly replaces it. Look at pirates, actual 17th and 18th century pirate crews, the ones history remembers as lawless. The economist Peter Leeson studied their internal codes and found something startling. Pirate ships had written constitutions. They elected their captains. They had rules for dividing loot, for compensating injuries, even primitive systems resembling workers' compensation. These were men operating completely outside any nation's law, and they built government anyway. Why does that keep happening? The anthropologist Christopher Boham spent years studying small foraging societies that had existed for thousands of years without kings, courts, or written law. He found that these groups were not violent free-for-alls. They were often fiercely egalitarian. If someone tried to dominate the group pushed back together, sometimes through mockery, sometimes through exile. The enforcement was social. It was constant. And it worked well enough to hold human societies together for the vast majority of our history as a species. Here is the uncomfortable part. Law, in the formal sense, is relatively new. For most of the time humans have existed, we lived without it, not without order, without law. That does not mean removing law today would be safe. Modern societies are enormous, anonymous, and dense in a way ancient bands never were. The systems Ostrom and Boham studied worked in communities where everyone knew everyone. Strip away formal law from a city of 10 million strangers, and the informal enforcement that once held small groups together simply cannot scale fast enough. That gap is where the chaos would actually come from, not from human nature itself, but from a mismatch between our old social tools and the size of the world we built. So what would really happen if the laws vanished tonight? In the first hours, probably confusion. In the first days, in tight communities, something older might reassert itself. Neighbors watching neighbors, reputation becoming currency again, trust rebuilding itself from the ground up the way it always has. And somewhere in a city with no police left to call, a new rule would get written by someone for the same reason pirates once wrote theirs. Not because a government demanded it, because people left with nothing else tend to build order anyway. Maybe the real discovery is not what happens when law disappears. Maybe it is what was underneath the law all along.